Hey moms, it's Laura Ollinger. Welcome to the Positively Healthy Mom podcast. Because there's no manual for the hardest job in the world. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's episode of the Positively Healthy Mom podcast. I'm so excited to introduce you to an old friend of mine, Jonny Pardoe, and he is across the pond over in England. So, Jonny, say hello to everybody.
Hello. Thank you for inviting me. Like you say, across the pond. So it's always good to connect on these things. And well done, Laura. We were just talking about your podcast before. Well done, Laura, on sticking with it for so long and all the value you're giving out there. So yeah, looking forward to seeing what I can add today. Thank you.
Yay. Okay. That's exciting. So Jonny's specialty is, in fact, his podcast is named after his specialty, which is the Self-Esteem and Confidence Mindset podcast. And he also has a podcast just for men, the Men's Mental Health and Growth podcast. But today, since we're talking to the moms, we're kind of generally talking about self-esteem and confidence. So Jonny, what is the difference between self-esteem and confidence? Because I think a lot of people in their heads, they just think it's kind of like the same thing and they kind of bundle it together. But you have described in the past that it's a separate thing. They're connected, but separate. So how would you define them?
Yeah, sure. And one thing I'll add is like everyone's got like different, it's always open to interpretation how people see. Like I'm not so like in that place where my model of the world has to be agreed by everyone, it's that would be kind of like a place where I come from maybe like 10, 15 years ago of like insecurity, like everyone's got to agree with me. I remember being at school and it's like, no, that's the right answer, I'm right, and like that kind of thing. But that was really a lack of self-esteem underneath, really. So how I've like interpreted it from kind of like my journey when I went down this whole really trying to improve my self-esteem and then build my confidence in things over the years when I was kind of in like a down point, a fair few years ago now. Life's not always like perfect. Obviously, there's the ups and downs. I've had it even the last couple of years, but I kind of did a lot of tuning into like research and just reflecting on my experiences and then trying things. So for me, self-esteem in kind of like a simple definition was really Marissa Peer. I don't know if you come across her. She's a British hypnotherapist, but she described it really well, and it just resonated with me. And it's just how much you like yourself, and it's like not talking about achievements. We're not talking about how many medals you've got, how many awards. And I it's still something I catch myself now and then because I like to go out and achieve things, but I used to be so driven by that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's just about how much you like yourself. And that's how I put it personally. Now,
Mm-hmm.
confidence, on the other hand, again, they do link. But confidence to me is the trust you have in yourself to do something. And I believe you can actually have confidence in things because this is my story. You can have confidence in things. You could have low self-esteem at the same time. So, for
Mm-hmm.
example, you can be very confident at a job. Like you've got a lot of trust in that, in your ability to do a job if you've maybe worked there for a year or two, or certainly for a few years, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's a sport you've been playing for a while, and that confidence has been built from repetition and then doing things over and over again. And maybe it took a little bit of courage and facing fears at the beginning. So I believe when someone says, this is my view, but if someone says, I lack confidence, I'm always like, in what? Like, I want to know the specifics, right? It's often I often hear like social confidence, interacting with people. So is like a very, very common one. That's certainly me, like really nervous about like talking to people like for many, many years in like my teen years and things like that. But yeah, like if you got good self-esteem, when I've had like better self-esteem and improved it and people I've coached through it as well in the past, when the self-esteem builds, you generally have a lot more confidence in different areas to go out and do things because you've built that relationship with yourself, as opposed to having not such a good developed relationship with yourself and not liking yourself. I found personally I'm less likely to go out and then try things. So that's a difference for me. Confidence can be specific. It is about trusting yourself to do something. Self-esteem is purely, I see it as a relationship with yourself.
Mm. Well, thank you for differentiating that, because I myself, even though I work in these areas, I sometimes find myself using the words interchangeably or getting confused. And then after a while, I just make it this big blob. So I do like having that separation. I think it's important. Um, and so I want to know, like, how today we're going to serve the moms. And I think it's important that we address them, because so many moms I find are kind of going through the motions of life, and it's been so long since they've really taken time out to reflect on themselves, because once you have kids, life gets really busy and you're so focused on helping your kids achieve in all the areas of their life, academically or extracurricular, sports, and all those things, that moms tend to lack both self-esteem and confidence. And I think part of that is even happens like during pregnancy, like in a physical aspect, we start to lose that part of ourself. And so I'm not asking you to comment on pregnancy or anything like that, but just like, how can we serve the moms? And I think if we do that, we will also be serving their kids as well. So I really want to focus on them. So, as a mom, we're very busy. And so how do you think a mom could start to like herself more? Like, what would be the steps she would need to do?
Hmm. So, like you say, you fully obviously I'm not a mum, but like I've coached mums in the past because they've like come to me for when I was kind of in the confidence coaching space. And the beauty of coaching is you don't have to. There's a difference between a coach and mentor, and that's the beauty. You can kind of coach something out of someone in their situation. Now, what I found to be true in terms of generally people I've coached, and also when I have worked with a mum, is making time. This has been one of the things that comes to mind, is making time for something you absolutely love to do. Like that was a really key one that I saw, a very common pattern. I can remember someone I was working with, and it was just like, I've always loved to paint, but I just, I don't do it anymore. And it's just like, right, guess what your next action steps are, right? So, so yeah, that kind of like challenge. So, and then it was just like the light bulb moment when she was doing it, and just the excitement. It's like, oh, I can't do that for half an hour in front of people. Well, how about you aim for 1 minute and you just paint for a minute? And suddenly, strangely enough, she was painting for an hour. So, it's sometimes if you can't. So that's the first one. I kind of there's kind of like a side point to it. But I've always found for me personally, in my own self esteem and working my own relationship, is finding something you love. And maybe that's going to take a little bit of exploration. Maybe you're just a little bit unsure right now. You're a bit like, so a couple of good questions. What did I love doing as a little girl? Maybe the mum might ask herself, or or whatever the gender of the person is, what do they like doing as a child? Um, and then also like, actually, what am I intrigued by? And then just even starting small and getting like 5-10 minutes a day into actually schedule that in. Um, that's a really important one I found. The other thing I found is boundaries is really, really key. Like for me personally,
Mhm.
boundaries in kind of all sorts of like situations. I wouldn't really have them. I wouldn't say I've ever been like severely. I know, unfortunately, some people get like severely bullied and stuff. Like maybe a little bit in school, but kind of more a little bit of a loner at some times, but never kind of seriously bullied. And but I did have going through like the workplace and school, like taken advantage of a little bit. Um, and as a result, when I got like older into the workplace, going out there dating, sort of like relationships and stuff like that, it'd be a bit like I didn't really have those like boundaries. So I think like now I'm just like I've actually sometimes got too low a tolerance. It's like I'm not going to flip out, but I'm like, yeah, that communication was poor. I don't find that acceptable. Or I was kind of being like, or someone will say, I'm not like too sensitive, but I have those clear boundaries when someone oversteps it. So I say boundaries is a very, very key one, and even just start small with boundaries. That's a really, really important one. Uh, and then the third thing I'll say to this, there's a lot we could go into this, but the third one I would say is it's constant like training. It's constant training because like it's like going to the gym. I use this analogy. It's very simple. May have heard it before, but it's like to keep our physical health, right? You go to the gym a lot, or you might exercise, maybe it's not the gym, exercise, even a little bit, little and often, eat well, look after the body. But on the mental side, one thing I've made a mistake in, and when I've like even coached like mums through this, it's like, okay, so it's like, oh, I've got all this like negative self-talk. I just don't believe in myself when, I'm talking to them. It's like, okay, so what like mental gym training are you doing? And they're just like, what? And it's just, so I'm like, then go into how are you training your like brain to like believe in yourself and like love yourself? And I remember like someone I was working with, and she was saying, this stuff's like really, really hard, like starting this. And it's like, I'm not going to lie, it is. It's not like an overnight fix. It's not going to be, it's like when you go to the gym and you haven't been, like physical gym, you haven't been for like months or like a year. And then you're like, your PT comes in and goes like, right, we're going to do this, this, and this. That's going to be seriously hard. But you know what? Over time, you adapt to it and then you might push yourself a little bit. And it's just an ongoing process. But that's what I would say, like the constant training of saying the right things to yourself, and just looking, and as our mentor teaches us, always thinking about where you want to go as well. So, and that constant training. So those are some of the things I'd say for building that initial relationship, if I was to give three things.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And one thing that keeps popping up for me is there's got to be some level of acceptance, because I know men go through a similar journey in their life where, I mean, I know you're in peak physical shape, you train a lot, you run marathons and all these things. But obviously, as a man, ages, things deteriorate or decline to an extent, right? It doesn't have to be extreme, but maybe some men start to go bald and lose their hair. And somehow there's this like loss of, self-esteem in that process. And so I was wondering, like, if you could comment on that, like the physical kind of loss. And I'm wondering, like, if the solution is like acceptance. Like, yes, I'm no longer in my 22-year-old body, but now I'm 48 and I love and accept myself. Like, what could you say about that?
I would say I'm with you on like the acceptance, because there's so many times, I've lost things, whether it was like relationships, whether it was jobs, whether it was whether I couldn't run as fast on like a football pitch and be as well. Well, probably the ability's still there, but like the speed and stuff probably is not, and things like that. Like, but the situations like that I've lost or have gone and things like that. So in terms of that, I would say the acceptance is a key one, but acceptance isn't like, for me, isn't about like, right, I accept it, I'm getting on with it, I'm fine, right? It's that's just like for me, that's, I've done that many times, and that's an unhealthy suppression. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so in those situations, what I think it's the acceptance, yes. What I would also say in those situations for me, in similar kind of situations and people I've worked with, is again, it comes back to the right. It's looking where you want to go moving forward, what you can do, like what are your goals, where you want to go, what do you want, as our mentor's like favorite question is, and it's served me well. And sometimes I found I've had to ask myself that in really dark places, like five times plus a day, and just keep asking that question again and again and again. What do you want? What do you want? What do you want? And obviously, don't say what you want is something that's been and gone and that's like physically impossible, but it's like, what do you want now? Well, with what I've got now, I just want to have as much energy as possible. And there's crazy things happening out there. You see, there's like 80-year-old like bodybuilders and all these kind of things. So looking, yeah, looking at where you want to go is a really key one. But also finding time to actually feel some of those emotions of maybe like, because there's different kind of like losses I found. It's not just losing a person, but situations and scenarios, but also finding the time to feel those things. I do like a little bit daily. I'll do that in my meditation, my breath work. Sometimes I'll need to feel like some kind of, if I've like something's gone bad or frustration, I might need to feel that. But weekly, what I like to do is dive into like a deeper breathwork session as well, or just and really go into those feelings. So for me, when things are changing, it's about, yes, about the acceptance, looking where you want to go now, but also finding time to actually grieve those things and actually allow them to feel in your body. And for me, one of the most powerful tools to do that has been breath work personally as well.
Mm. Well, I'd love to get into that. I want to stay focused on our topic, but that's what I found is I had someone once tell me that sometimes just a pure coaching in itself is a spiritual bypass of the emotions. So if, like you said, we're suppressing them or we're overlooking them or we're only focused on, what we want and not allowing ourselves that moment to process whatever the negative or sad emotion is, then it's a bypass, and that can actually kind of cause all sorts of other unintended consequences. And so, tell us just for a minute about the breath work.
Yeah, sure. So what I just like touch on what I said there as well. Like it's you got to be a little bit sensitive with this one because it's not. I always want to be conscious of the look where you want to go and move forward. There's kind of the side of like, oh, forget my feelings. I'm gonna like smash the world, and you see some people out there doing that, and you can actually tell that even if they make a bit of money, they're actually got a little bit. They're driven by quite a lot of pain sometimes. I've
Mm-hmm.
met those individuals. I've been one of them as well on that side. But then there's also the side where it's just like you're holding on to something for too long that you don't actually move forward. So for me,
Mm-hmm.
the beauty of this again, this is just personal experience, and I can never tell a person when they're ready to move forward or whatever. It's up to them to decide. I can, as a coach yourself, you can only ask them the questions and challenge and facilitate that, right? For me, it's about that healthy middle. It's like, okay, right, I'll feel things, allow myself to feel, and at the same time, I'll look where I want to go as well. Now, sometimes they're a bit out of balance. It's not like they're 50-50. If you've just like had a nasty breakup, like I like would have had like a year or two ago, it's just like you need to be feeling that more than like perhaps going out there and then start dating, right? But then over time, it's like, okay, you might still be processing something, but actually you're going out there and taking action. Like you have or you like lose someone, like someone unfortunately passes away, you're not going to be like, right, I'm going to, well, some people might, but like you've got a business to run, right? And there's certain things you might have to do, right? But there's going to be more time on that grieving for a certain period. And it's not for me to say how long that period is. It's up to the person. But for me, it's about having the two things and then always looking at what I need and feeling into it and being honest. So I just wanted to kind of like say that. But with the breath work has been really powerful for me, probably the most powerful modality because I like to write down things and like sit with things. But what breath work does is there's different sessions. You can do one daily, which just like regulates, calms you down, feels a little bit what's up. And then there's another one I'll do, which is a lot deeper. It's like, it's about an hour long. It's not holotropic breathing. It's like somatic breath work. Shorter, but you're really breathing to like activate your sympathetic nervous system. Which you're like, why are you doing that? Because that's like the stress. That's the
Yeah.
stress. But you're doing that to activate and actually feel the stress so that you can regulate it and calm it down. Now, what that does is breathes into the body and taps into some emotions that unconsciously we weren't even aware they were there, and actually that can tap into memories, and we go through things and sometimes we like repress things from like even childhood or just like we unconscious. So for me, suppression's when you're just trying to push it away, but repression's when it's quite very traumatic and you just like unconsciously push it away. um but yeah, it really allows you to go deep and actually experience those emotions that may be blocking you feeling like fully. And sometimes you can come out like people have been on those sessions and they're like, sometimes they're like screaming, they're smashing things, but that's actually a very like healthy release. So
Mm-hmm.
that's been a really powerful tool, especially the longer ones. And you get different experiences. It's not you're going to cry or scream. Sometimes you might just be like very relaxed. Other times I've just like laughed through it. I just like remembered something which was stupid, and it's just like, oh, that was funny. That I needed to experience that. So
Mm.
it really allows you to tap into some of those emotions a bit deeper through guided breathing techniques.
That's so cool. I'm so glad that I veered off track a little bit on our topic, but I think that was really valuable. And I think that moms can certainly get something out of that. So, last topic is kind of going back to your teenage self. Like, what do you wish you would have known, or what advice would you give yourself knowing what you know now?
Really interesting, Laura, because I'm actually writing a book right now about men's mental health, and it's I'm tapping into like every single memory from like childhood. I've written so much, I've not even got to the teenage bit yet, but there's quite a lot to write about that. What I wish I would have known then, like when I go into that. For me, a couple of notable things. I almost died in a car crash when I was 11 years old, and I didn't even process that. And there's a lot of like deaths early on, like losing relatives, where I didn't even process them. But it was what I wish I would have known then. Like, and I don't think even like the whole mental health, it wasn't non-existent, but it was certainly a lot of less aware. This was, we're talking the early 2000s kind of thing, like when I was sort of a young teenager, but or like 11, sort of 12, 13. But I just, yeah, wish I knew how to express and feel a lot more, because it was more kind of just like daydreaming, thinking in the future a lot. And actually, what it did lead to, I wasn't diagnosed or anything, but I had a friend who was diagnosed with like derealization, a lot of symptoms similar to that. So I'd have these kind of, um, because I wouldn't be experiencing those emotions from the death, from the car crash, all these kind of things, I was having sort of like panic attacks in class a little bit. I'd be like feeling, oh my God, am I actually here? And it was just like a really scary time for me. There was no like deep diagnosis, but I kind of felt like it was something like sort of like building up. Fortunately, it kind of went away with time. But yeah, I had a friend who had very similar. So I wish I would have known, and I think there's still work to be done. Don't get me wrong, but I think it's a bit better known now that like kind of like support on people's mental health a lot more. Uh, I can grow even more, and that's one of my missions with men's mental health in particular. Um, but yeah, being able to express the emotions and like feel things a lot more. Um, the other thing I wish I would have known a lot sooner in life, which I kind of didn't experience, I experienced unintentionally and then realized how I could crave it, is how that courage actually built my confidence in things and actually built a better relationship with myself. Um, I was kind of always had this view as a teenager that, oh, okay, they're just like, like I didn't know what self-esteem, confidence like was. I just knew the word confidence, but it's like that's just a confident person. Oh, that's just a confident. That's how I'd label people. I'd just be like, okay, I'm not. Maybe something good will happen to me, and it was very, very disempowering. It wasn't a bad
Mm.
like teenage. I'm not going to like make a dramatic story out of it, but it was very much kind of disempowered at certain times, and kind of I'd just be like, I wish I knew that courage was a real, real key for me. And courage for me doesn't have to be like a massive jump, like suddenly you're like doing a speech in front of the whole school, for example. It could just
Mhm.
be going and then having a tricky conversation with someone or volunteering for one thing. Um, I wish I knew that a lot sooner, but I'm glad I learned it later in life as well. So yeah, courage. I'd love to see that promoted in teenagers as much as possible, and then also that kind of feeling into the emotion a lot more I think would have really really served me, because it did come out as I was going out into like more my teen years and 20s and things like that. It was that emotion would come out more and more without realizing.
That's so good. Okay, last question is what do you, this is just an out there question, but what do you want for yourself?
For myself, I just love to sit with myself and enjoy try and enjoy every day as much as possible, whilst doing something like meaningful. Yeah, there's day-to-day responsibilities, but for me, my intention really is to always keep connected with the inner child side of me, like what he loved doing. So, and I found that as a really powerful one, as I kind of touched on a little bit with the connecting with like the child version of you, and doing that every single day, just doing something I enjoy. I also It's also really important, like the relationships in my life. Like I'm talking all kind of relationships, like family, friends, etc. Um, that they're like really, really important and make time for that. And then also one of the key things for me is always like constantly working on my health, both the physical side and the mental side, um, and then be able to do that. Like I've got a lot of goals and ambitions, like how much money I want to make, like what kind of business I want to develop, what kind of like mission. So I visit that like several times a day, and what I like to do is just set the next milestone really, rather than being a multi-millionaire or whatever. It's
Yeah.
like what is the next milestone for me. So yeah, those are some of the things that are certainly keeping me going. And the great thing is having like coaches in my corner, and I always encourage having coaches. I've got a great one at the moment, do a lot of men's work with him, and has got a men's group. And that's part of like what I want, be part of those communities as well. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And okay, pardon me, because I feel like I am going into coach mode right now. So permission to coach. If you are achieving all these things every day, what does that mean for you? Like, what does that mean to your life if you can do all that?
for me, it's a great coaching question. Love it, Laura. If I can do things, yeah, for me, it's more one of the things I'm really trying to do is like I used to I do try and catch myself from being too much in the achiever mode, and it's like I don't I do get into it quite a lot. But one of the things I'm trying to like really experience is one of the top things is to experience a sense of joy and gratitude, as much as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when I do those things, what it means to me is I'm trying to like as our mentor teachers is to try and really celebrate and feel those things. Uh, as like the classic achiever mode, it's just like boom, boom, boom. So
Yeah.
yeah, for me, doing those things each day is just like, yeah, done it. Let's celebrate, and then feel good about it afterwards. So
I think I got what I wanted there. Yes. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
yeah, I was just saying it's feeling those emotions, because we do things for emotions, but understanding, well, I believe we do it's going for the emotions, but then also creating a stronger relationship with myself, so I can obviously develop that of others as well.
I think we came full circle there because what you just said to me is the key ingredient of your self-esteem and confidence. I almost feel like you kind of doing all these things every day, or at least attempting to, or a partial effort, or whatever, what that means is that it feels good. And then you can like yourself, have a good relationship with yourself, and feel that you can trust in yourself that you are able to achieve things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Awesome. Okay. Well, I feel like we kind of nailed it on that, or you did. So thank you for that explanation. Jonny, where can people find you going forward?
Yeah, sure. You can find my podcasts. I got two. The Self-Esteem and Confidence Mindsets. I put out both podcasts put out 5 episodes a week. So the Self-Esteem and Confidence Mindset podcast, have guests as well, like you do, Laura. And then the other one is if you know a man, or you got a man in your life and you think he'd benefit from this, I've got the Men's Mental Health and Growth podcast as well. That on all podcast platforms, Spotify, Apple, all of the main ones. And then if you want to find me on social media, my handle is Jonny C Pardoe. So Facebook, Instagram, TikTok as well.
Perfect. Well, you're killing it. I mean, your podcast top 1%. So congratulations. You're doing great. Amazing. I can't wait to see where else you go from here.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it, Laura. Thank you for having me on. And great. Well done with all the success with yours as well.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, take care. Thank you for listening to the Positively Healthy Mom podcast, because there's no manual for the hardest job in the world. Don't forget to subscribe and share with your friends.